Long overdue, I know, but in this video I'm going to show you the process of me setting up my Fluval Shaker 252 to be a marine tank. So we're just finishing off the fill, and we're going to see in a second whether this overflow works. Also, I'm experimenting because I think it might be nice to see if we can use some black lava rock in this aquarium. I have got some pre-cycled live rock, but I've also got loads of black lava rock that was in my old freshwater tank. It has still got moss and stuff on it, so I'm going to let this cure for a couple of weeks before I do anything with it. However, I think this is going to look really ace. Basically, I've changed the filtration, so I've connected it to a 450 litre sump via pipework. To see that, look at my other video. However, here is how it is working. That is working beautifully. As you can see, it's drawing from the surface and it's going into my sump via the pipework. The only other modification in addition to my video is I've added a little bit of a flow controller, which is just an output for an airline, but it's done the job. The reason I've done that is if you don't control the flow coming out, this pipe doesn't fill and it's very noisy. Other than that though, it is working perfectly. So here's the tank 2 days after filling it with water. It's still running beautifully. The black lava rock, which I'm going to be using in this tank, is cycling in here. I'm going to give this a good month or so before I do anything. Basically, it's just a waiting game now. I've added a couple of macroalgae in there just to see how they react. I've also added a couple of dove snails, and you can see already they've been in there 5 minutes, the amount of algae they've eaten. So I might add another 5 or 10 in here just to keep the algae down, because there won't be any substrate in here for, as I said, a good month. So this tank, I just want to cycle it really. Although it's attached to a mature-ish system, I want the glass and everything, I want the biofilms to, you know, become live and seed this tank so it's nice and mature before I put any of the sand or I put the rock inside of it. I have just added 20 kilos of coral sand. I did pre-rinse it, but obviously there's still a bit of dust floating around. To combat that, I've added a small filter. You can just about see it there with some floss in. I've also isolated it from this system. So over the next 24 hours, that should hopefully capture all of that dust, and this tank will then be lovely and clean. Quick update on my Fluval Shaker 252. It's been running on this system, so it's all connected together for a good couple of weeks now. This is lava rock in here, which I have pre-matured in one of my sumps, and I've just aquascaped it literally 10 minutes ago. It's still maturing, which is why there is algae and all sorts of horribleness growing at the back, but I've already put in a couple of macroalgae species just to test the waters, just to see if they'll grow yet, because sometimes you can put macroalgae in a little bit too early and all this horrible algae grows over it. And here we are about 2.5 months later. I have obviously not rushed this video. I wanted to show you the process of it setting up quite quickly, and then we'll get on to actually how it's running now, which is now. How exciting. So I think first and foremost, I'll just turn the lights off so we don't get any glare in the glass. That's much better. So what do you think of my aquascape and my tank? It has gone through quite a bit of change in this video. You can see how when I started it, it was a cloudy mess of sand, and then I added some corals and I added a bit of macroalgae, and unfortunately through that first month I had a massive diatom bloom and I had to remove quite a lot of the species that I added in there. But 2.5 months later, and we're looking nice. I think it's just started to get over that hump of maturing. I've added a lot of fish from my old systems in my other shed, and they're all getting on really well, and the macroalgae, importantly, have started to grow. As I've mentioned elsewhere in my other videos, this tank is connected to my other tanks here to the right of them, so this is all one big system if you weren't aware. So really this shaker is just an extension of a 900 litre system, and that's worked really well. But it has been a bit of a surprise to me how long this tank took to mature. I kind of assumed that because I was attaching it to this tank which had a mature filter, and obviously these tanks at the top which were maturing, but at least a month or so old. I kind of figured that this tank would take less time than a normal marine tank to actually mature itself, but it hasn't. Really, having a mature system attached to it didn't make a great deal of difference at all in the length of time this has taken. It's still taken sort of a 2.5 to 3 month period before adding anything in terms of corals has worked. So I took a lot of them back out once the diatoms appeared. So that was a surprise. Even though the rock was live, even though the system was sort of live, it still took a normal amount of time. So there's a lesson there I've learned. You still cannot rush a marine system, even if you think you've cheated the timescale a little bit. You still can't do it. And actually, onto the tank, I'm really happy with it. Obviously, it's still new. There's still a little bit of haziness in the water, partly to do with the fact that I've just changed the filter floss and I've disturbed a few bits in here. You can see, in general, the fish are looking really, a little bit of poop there for food. Really healthy. They're actually really well settled into this tank, because normally things like bangais and anthias, they would tend to hide, well they used to anyway when I approached the tank, but now they're out and about. There should be a third anthias, but I think he's hiding at the back. They tend to bully each other. I'm getting the same thing with my blue reef chromis. There's a mandarin there, look how lovely. These two seem to have sort of paired up. I don't know if that's the right word for it. And then this third one down here just sort of hides under that rock. So even in this size tank, there is a bit of bullying already starting to happen. In general though, things are getting on. This tang, you can see, is getting a bit nipped. I haven't caught who it is, but I believe it to be these midnight clowns. Hopefully though, as this settles down, that will stop happening. Obviously I need to monitor that, because I don't really want this guy to be nipped and stressed out. So you can see it's looking really healthy. Macroalgae wise, I've added a mixture of macroalgae which I haven't used in my other tanks. I've avoided the caulerpas that I normally add. So we've got Caulerpa taxifolia in here. This is a new one to me in terms of actually using it in a tank. It's taken me a while to get it to grow, to be fair. I found it to be a little bit finicky. As soon as I move a bit of it, it seems to have melted. But this particular part of it has survived. So I don't know if that was down to the maturation of the tank. So now it's a mature tank. It's pretty happy and starting to spread, so I'm happy with that. The problem with having one frond is if this one frond decides to go sexual, which it can do, I'll lose the whole lot. So what I really need to do is either cut this frond up into multiple fragments, and then, you know, that'll prevent that from taking out my whole colony, or I need to try and add some extra ones. So I've done it here, I added a little bit, but you can see it's just starting to go sexual. So weird thing happening with my taxifolia. It's sort of a new species on me, so I'm learning how to keep it alive. We've also got some Botrocladia there, and we've got some Botrocladia there. You can still see how this tank's still maturing, because normally on a Botrocladia stem we don't want all this hair algae growing, and eventually that will stop, but it's because the tank's new, that's the reason that's happening. We've got some purple branching Gracilaria, again covered in stuff from the maturation of this tank, but that should clear. It's starting to grow, so that's all good. Gracilaria mammillaris, which is this one here, really nice species of algae. And then we've got Gracilaria heyi, which is up here. The problem with a lot of these algae is the hermit crabs I've got in here tend to remove them from where I've placed them. So I've been running a battle for the last couple of weeks where I've been jamming stuff into rockwork, hoping it will attach before the hermit crabs remove it. And I'm getting there, like the mushrooms and the zoas are starting to attach now, whereas before every day I'd come down and I'd have to replace all of this stuff from the sandbed back up onto the rockwork. But I'm getting there. This has definitely attached. My zinnias, metallic zinnias, have attached, so they've stopped being knocked off now. Back onto the algae, we've got some Halamenia maculata. This is a really nice species. He's starting to grow now. You can see new fronds appearing, so that's great. A little bit of Soliaria, which is that sort of red sticky one. This is one I've always struggled to grow. I've never ever really been successful, but I've got a rock small colony, which I thought I'd put in here and see how it does. Got a little bit of sickly looking red ogo. It was sickly when I put it in there, I don't know why, and I'm hoping it was going to recover, but it's a little bit pale. Fingers crossed though. So this is the rarest macroalgae I have. It's called Galaxua rugosa. It's a coralline algae and it's hairy. Again, it's covered in stuff at the moment, but it should clear itself up the longer the tank runs. It's a really weird looking algae. You can see it's sort of hairy, but it's coralline. And as far as I can tell, it's basically bulletproof. I've had this growing in low light, I've had it growing in high light, low nutrient, high nutrient, low flow, high flow, you name it, and it just hasn't died. The only downside to it is it's taken ages to grow. So it's not one that's really easy to sort of cultivate. This is probably 2 years growth from a single stick, so that is a lot of time to get not a lot of algae. But I think it's very different and stunning, and probably in the UK, I'm going to say one of the only examples. In the UK, I've never seen it anywhere else, never seen anyone selling it, or I've never seen it anywhere in anyone's videos or pictures or anything. So very, very lucky to have this, a very rare species, and something a bit different as well. Coral wise, pretty self-explanatory. I didn't want to do anything massively crazy in this tank. I wanted them to be a symbiosis between the algae and the corals. Another algae I've forgotten actually, we've got this codium here, and we've also got a little bit of Cladophora prolifera, which is this green stuff here, really nice when it grows out. We've got some softies, got some orange mushrooms, toadstool, zoas of different colours. This guy, frog spawn, it's just a sort of standard green with purple tip frog spawn. Duncan's coral, this started as a one head frag, so he's growing nicely. And we've got a couple of blastos, sort of a regular green centre blasto and a red blasto. This Kenyan tree at the back here, this is a green one. You can't really see it on this camera, but it is a fluorescent green. This started off as a tiny, tiny little nugget. I mean, like, on the bit of rock, there was a vague fluorescent green splodge. And over the last year, he's grown into a proper, nice little Kenyan tree. So that shows you the power that soft corals have. They don't need many cells to actually carry on and grow and become alive. Now on to the other thing is, yes, this is lava rock, and lots of people don't know about lava rock in marine tanks, and to be fair, this is my first attempt at lava rock in a marine tank, and so far you can see it's going really well. Now long term, I don't know how it's going to work out, but I can't really see how it's going to be a bad thing long term. If it was going to have some issues with my tank, then it would have happened by now, but actually it seems to be maturing in the same way as a normal live rock aquarium. So obviously I'm going to keep monitoring it. I think I'll do a separate video later on live rock versus lava rock and how to use a lava rock in a marine tank. So let me know what you think about my setup here. Obviously it's still a new tank, things are still growing. I mean, the macroalgae has only really started to grow in the last week or two. So we've got a long way to go when it comes to growing this tank out and maturing it. But I think given that it's attached to a large volume of water, I think, you know, we're going to be having a really nice display in this tank in the coming year or so. So thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please remember to leave a like and also subscribe to my channel. Thanks to all my channel patrons and members. Once again, thanks for watching and happy fish keeping.